Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have an exciting show for you tonight. We have an interview with Greg Wilson, the founder of Hempwood, a company in Murray, Kentucky that makes wood and flooring made out of hemp fiber. He takes hemp stems, cannabis stems, and forms them into a solid fiber, kind of like this, with a couple of finishes. It's stronger than any known wood species, including oak and hickory. So stay tuned for an exciting interview. We've got a lot of interesting hemp news, and we'll be back immediately after the infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Welcome back. The estimated number of persons arrested in the United States for violating marijuana laws declined precipitously in 2020, according to data released by the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Nonetheless, several 100,000 Americans continue to be arrested on marijuana-related charges, primarily in states where possession of the plant remains criminally outlawed. According to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, police made an estimated 350,150 arrests for marijuana-related violations in 2020. This is a 36% decrease from 2019 totals, when police made an estimated 545,602 marijuana-related arrests. Not since the early 1990s has the FBI reported so few marijuana-related arrests in a single year. As more states move toward the sensible policy of legalizing and regulating cannabis, we're seeing a decline in the arrest of non-violent marijuana consumers nationwide. The fight for legalization is a fight for justice. While these numbers represent a historic decline in arrests, even one person being put into handcuffs for the simple possession of marijuana is one too many. Of those arrested for cannabis-related activities, 91%, or 317,793, were arrested for marijuana possession offenses only. Overall, marijuana arrests are down more than 50% from their peak in 2008, when police made over 800,000 marijuana-related arrests. Since 2012, 18 states and Washington, D.C. have enacted laws legalizing the possession of small amounts of cannabis by adults. Marijuana arrests represent 30.3% of all drug-related arrests. According to the FBI, marijuana-related arrests were least likely to occur in western states, most of which have legalized the possession of the substance, and were most prevalent in the Northeast, where they constituted an estimated 50% of all drug arrests. This will likely change going forward, as several northeastern states, including Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York, have all legalized their marijuana markets in the recent months. Down south in California, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed legislation into law for the use of medical cannabis products within hospitals and other eligible healthcare facilities. California Senate Bill 311, also known as Ryan's Law, provides for a terminally ill patient's use of medicinal cannabis within a healthcare facility. The proposal prohibits patients from either inhaling or vaping herbal cannabis products and restricts the use of any form of cannabis in the emergency room. Senator Hueso, the bill's lead sponsor, said in a statement, quote, "It's inconceivable to me that in a state where medical cannabis was legalized more than 25 years ago, those in deepest suffering receive treatment in our state's healthcare facilities cannot access this proven, effective, and prescribed treatment. Instead, terminally ill patients in California's healthcare facilities are given heavy opiates that rob them of their precious last moments with their family and friends. This is a simple yet critical move that will provide relief, compassion, and dignity to terminally ill Californians. To date, a handful of states, including Connecticut and Maine, have enacted legislation explicitly permitting the use of eligible cannabis products for hospitalized patients under certain circumstances. Nationwide, marijuana jobs are becoming a refuge for retail and restaurant workers. An estimated 321,000 Americans now work in the legal cannabis industry, outnumbering the country's dentists, paramedics, and electrical engineers. The cannabis industry is riding a pandemic high. Marijuana dispensaries and cultivation facilities, deemed essential by many states at the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, became an early refuge for retail and restaurant workers who've been furloughed or laid off. The industries continue to grow, adding nearly 80,000 new cannabis jobs in 2020, more than double what it did the year before. An estimated 321,000 Americans now work in the industry, a 32% increase from last year, making marijuana one of the nation's fastest growing sectors. In other words, the United States has more legal cannabis workers than dentists, paramedics, or electrical engineers. That surge in cannabis hiring has put pressure on traditional employers, particularly in the 18 states and the District of Columbia, where recreational marijuana use is legal, to ease drug testing requirements. Amazon, the nation's second largest private employer, said in June that it would stop screening employees for cannabis use and would support federal legalization to legalize marijuana. A number of other employers, including retailers, restaurants, and city governments, have also dropped such requirements in an effort to attract workers in a labor market where job openings outpace the number of unemployed Americans, 10.9 million to 8.4 million. Legalization efforts have swept through the country since California began allowing medical marijuana use 25 years ago. Most U.S. states, 37 of them plus the District of Columbia, now allow its medical use, with a growing number legalizing the drug altogether. The latest to do so this summer were New Mexico, Connecticut, and Virginia. As a result, business is soaring. Sales of legal cannabis grew nearly 60% to $19 billion last year and are expected to balloon to $41 billion by 2025, according to Wall Street research firm Cohen. Down south in Mississippi, legislative leaders in Mississippi have requested that Republican Governor Tate Reeves convene a special legislative session in the coming days to address medical cannabis access. The request comes after lawmakers last week revealed that they reached an agreement on a draft legislation to regulate medical marijuana access in Mississippi. If the governor agrees to convene a special session, it would likely begin on Friday, October 1st, today. On Election Day 2020, 73% of Mississippi voters decided in favor of Initiative 65, which established a system of state licensed dispensaries to engage in the retail dispensing of cannabis and cannabis products to patients who possess a doctor's authorization. However, just prior to the vote, officials representing the city of Madison, including the town's Republican mayor, filed suit arguing that the legislature's failure to update guidelines for petitioners should invalidate the initiative vote. The state Supreme Court eventually decided 6-3 to nullify the vote in favor of Initiative 65. The new legislative proposal being advanced by lawmakers permits qualified patients, including those with chronic pain, to obtain herbal cannabis and other formulations of marijuana from licensed facilities. Localities would be permitted to opt out of allowing marijuana businesses to operate in their jurisdiction, a provision that differs from that of the voter-approved measure. Medical marijuana products are subject to a 7% sales tax rate in Mississippi, plus an excise tax of $15 per ounce. Product potency will be limited to 30% THC for flower products and 60% THC for concentrates. Due to the tax provisions included in the bill, the legislation requires passage from a supermajority of lawmakers. Nevertheless, House and Senate leaders in Mississippi say they have the votes necessary in both chambers for passage. The proposal is opposed by State Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner Republican Andy Gibson, who says that his office will not participate in the plan because cannabis remains illegal under federal law. He's previously threatened to sue over the plan. If you live in Mississippi, send a message to Governor Reeves and others in the legislature urging them to convene a special session to address the medical marijuana issue. Our last story tonight is from Washington, D.C. A small but growing number of states now permit eligible patients to be reimbursed for their medical cannabis-related costs through their workers' compensation insurance plans, according to an analysis of state policies conducted by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. The researchers affiliated with the federal agency assessed rules and regulations in 36 states permitting medical cannabis. They identified 6 states, Connecticut, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, and New York, that explicitly allow for employees to have their medical cannabis expenses reimbursed. In 3 of those states, New Hampshire, New York, and New Jersey, reimbursements were ordered by the courts earlier this year. By contrast, the authors identified 6 states where workers' compensation insurance is explicitly prohibited from reimbursing medical marijuana-related costs: Maine, Massachusetts, Florida, North Dakota, Ohio, and Washington State. In all other jurisdictions, the law is either silent on the issue or states that insurers are not required to reimburse employees who are injured on the job for the costs related to their use of medical cannabis. The authors stated that they expected the number of states permitting marijuana-related compensation to increase in the coming years, quote, as more workers petition state courts and administrative agencies for cannabis workers' compensation insurance reimbursements, end quote. The policy changes are further evidence of the legitimacy and social acceptance of medical cannabis. For millions of patients, cannabis is a legitimate therapeutic option. More and more, our laws and regulations are recognizing this fact and evolving their policies accordingly. This study, Review of Cannabis Reimbursement by Workers' Compensation Insurance in the United States and Canada, appears in this month's issue of the American Journal of Industrial Medicine. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. Now we have an interview with the founder of Hempwood in Kentucky that's making flooring and furniture products and other items out of hemp stems or marijuana stems. And so stay tuned for that interview. I also want to tell you that if you or a loved one are seeking a doctor who can help you qualify for medical marijuana or get your state's medical marijuana permit, we have referrals to doctors all over the United States. Give us a call at 503-235-4606. That number again is 503-235-4606. And here is our interview with Greg Wilson of Hempwood, who's working hard to restore hemp. Good night. I would like to introduce Greg Wilson with Hempwood. Greg is a pioneer in the hemp industry and is producing a product that looks like wood, feels like wood, is a little bit stronger than wood. And I'm really happy to have you on the show, Greg. When I saw your product a few weeks ago at the Southern Hemp Expo, I was really excited about that. It looks so good, and you've got flooring made out of it. So tell us first of all about your Hempwood product. I have my nifty sample right here, so I can knock on it and put your information up. There's yours.
Oh yeah.
So you got a couple different finishes on it, and unfinished as well.
Correct. Yep. So our hempwood is made 100% in Murray, Kentucky. So we're the only ones in the world making hempwood. All of our hemp comes from within 100 miles of our factory here. So it's all not only made in America or grown in America, but it's locally grown. Some of it grows on the farm.
Around the world.
Absolutely. I mean, I live 4 miles away, and we grow a little bit on my farm, and we grow some on the school farm, and we grow some on the farm that our factory is actually on. So it's all locally done around here. Some of it is dedicated fiber crop. Some of it is a dual crop where they go after the seeds on the top first, and then we buy the stalks afterwards. Some of it is a tri-crop where they try to use the flower and the seeds, and then we use the stalk. So there's all different types that come in. I think the dual crop is probably our favorite. It's the easiest to work with because it's a little bit longer stalks. It's a little bit taller than the stuff where people are after the flower. And it actually has the top of the plant already taken off, which we don't use. So we do not use the seed. We do not use the flower. We do not use the leaves. And we do not use the roots. But all of those have their intended purposes. So really, the whole plant utilization is what people should be thinking about, because there is some medicines and there is some oils that come out of the flower.
Yeah.
There is some foods. What did you say?
And the root, it turns out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the seeds are used for foods with the high protein content and the fatty acids and things, not only for humans, but for animals. On my little farm, we feed our chickens hemp seeds. They get about probably 5-gallon bucket of hemp seeds per month into their diet. And that does show benefits or improvements to their eggs. The university here, Murray State University, has a lot of feed trials that they've been doing on various types of animals, and a lot of different trials because you can't do it for commercial application right now. The seed can only be done for research purposes, just like the flower was a few years ago with making CBD. The FDA hasn't figured out how you can feed it to animals, even though humans are allowed to eat it. So
that's strange, isn't it?
It is. It's still a little bit of a weird thing. But in getting back to it, the leaves are actually really good for going back into the soil. So most of what's done with the leaves for hemp plants is going back into the soil, composting, and actually adding some of your nutrients back in there. The roots, for the most part, are left to do the same thing because the hemp plant is cut off 2 to 4 inches above the ground level, just like you would see beans or corn cut off just a little bit above where the dirt is. And those are left to compost in the soil and add some nutrients. But like you were saying, there is some medicines that can come out of those where they pull the roots out and they boil them, and there's different things that those do. I don't pretend to be a medical professional, so I can't tell you all of the ins and outs of it. But I can say that with my experience with the hemp plant, the seeds, we do eat those on a regular basis. We actually have some we keep here in the shop, in the factory here, in our break room. And people are putting it on this and that, whether it's if they got cereal for breakfast or if someone's sprinkling it on their salad at lunch.
Here in Oregon, hemp seed foods are very common in the stores. Even Kroger carries hemp seed milk and bread and lots of different products. It's becoming more and more mainstream every day.
It needs to be. I mean, really, the only thing that makes hemp more accepted is when people get away of the stigma of it's not just for smoking. And so if you can use it in your cooking oils, you can use it to build your house, use it in your insulation, use it in your flooring, all of those types of things that it's finally coming around to, then people are going to look at hemp as just another plant, which is what it should be. It's a plant that has some parts of it that people use for a medicine or a drug or whatever you want to call it, but 90% of the plant is just an ordinary agricultural crop, which should be treated that way. Yeah. And so if you plant it like a row crop, you plant it like winter wheat, and if you harvest it in a fashion where it adds to your soil, therefore next year you grow your corn and you make your money, but that draws from the soil, then you plant hemp and it adds back into the soil so you can get your rotations going. What hemp should be and what hemp currently is are two different things. From an agricultural perspective, hemp should be a single-digit percentage of the American annual planting. And so if that is 1% or 5%, I feel it'll always be in that range. But it's just like people that are planting canola or people that are planting almonds. It's a specialty crop, but it has its place. And a 3% of 50 million acres is a lot of hemp getting planted out there.
That's right.
And with what we do, it is it's very similar to where I firmly believe that hemp wood should be a single-digit percentage of the flooring market, which I believe is 3 to 5% is achievable. because of its performance and because of its eco-friendly characteristics. Like hempwood is harder than hickory. So it's harder than any domestic hardwood in the United States.
Which is perfect flooring.
Absolutely. High heels. Americans tend to be a little bit heavier. And so we're putting a lot more load bearing on the wood floor. Hey, since I moved to Kentucky, I've put on 15.
Yeah. Kentucky has a long history of hemp. It was the #1 producer of hemp products for 100 years, up until hemp was criminalized. And so you're gone right into the heartland of the traditional hemp production area there.
Absolutely. Well, if you look at it this way, it's the bluegrass state. It's known for growing grass, and hemp is in that same field or that same family. And so it only makes sense that your temperatures and your weather conditions and your soils are very suitable for growing hemp.
So do you use the bast fiber, which for our audience is the bark that is on the outside of the stem, or do you use the hurd fibers, which are inside that bark? Traditionally, the bast fibers have been used for canvas rope, lace, linen, and specialty papers like cigarette papers and thin Bible papers. But the hurd, what had been a waste product, but it's now being used to make paper and hempcrete. Do you use both the bast and the hurd fiber?
Yes, sir. So we use the entire stalk. Once the top of the plant is taken off for the seed and flower and leaves and things like that, then we use the rest of it. It's usually about 4 to 6 feet long. We actually want to have the hurd and the fiber in there because the hurd is super absorbent. And so we break open the cell structure of that hurd, the inner woody core, and then we impregnate that with a bio-based adhesive, which is based off of soy flour, just like old paper mache. And there's some organic acid.
From the soybeans and oil from the soybeans is the binder?
Correct.
Okay.
So 10% of hempwood is actually soy.
Okay.
And then once that absorbs into the hurd, that hurd is still longitudinally intact of the fiber. And the fiber is what keeps it in line, gives us a uniformity in the material so we can have a uniform density throughout. And the fiber is like rebar in concrete. That's what gives us all the strength in our hempwood. So the hurd gives us the woody core, the woody look, the woody visual, the wood aspects of it. The fiber gives us the strength.
So when did you first start making hempwood, and how did you come to conceive of this, and how did you get into this?
Well, so in 2003, I started getting into wood flooring. So it was wood flooring and then bamboo flooring. And I was working at a bamboo flooring mill, living in China for quite a while. And when the Chinese government deemed the bamboo patents to be a monopoly, because a foreign company was coming in and making something there, then my old boss said we better go find some new raw material sources for our product pipeline. And so we set up a nanotech lab in 2010, 2009, 2010. And in 2010, hemp was one of the base materials that went into this process to try to make a wood composite. So in 2010, the idea was born. The first samples were made, and it was just kind of a joke, actually. We called it weed wood. And nothing really came of it. But when I left that company, and I was one of the founders there, when I went my separate way, instead of keeping a bunch of options in the company for ownership, I kept my research. And so I was selling off some of my ownership in that company to fund what I was doing with this. And we did bamboo first, And then eucalyptus, like the plantation eucalyptus, was the second product that went through this process. And then recycled woods we're working on. And I set up plants in Poland and Tasmania and Ukraine doing that. And when hemp became legal in 2014 on the initial farm bill, some of the customers for the other products I'd worked on had seen the samples and started questioning me about it. And in 2015, I was hired to take a look to see if the project was feasible for a large flooring company that was on the stock exchange. And their company said, the marketing team said yes. For me doing the technical side of it, the technical advisor said yes. Their legal team said no. And because they were publicly traded and it wasn't legal across state lines, I said, well, what does this mean? They said, well, we're not going to pursue it. And once again, I said, well, can I keep my research? And they said, yes. And so I went home and started working on it in my basement and wrote some patents, wrote some trademarks, sold my house, built a factory.
I know both you and I have a history in China. I imported hemp paper and hemp fabric starting in the 1980s to the late 1990s. I know you lived there a lot longer than I did, though. I was there and haven't been back in 25 years. But
oh yeah, say hi to my better half. It's her birthday.
你好，我学习汉语在郑州大学。
她在郑州大学。
郑州。
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I said Chinese. You can't understand my Chinese, I see.
I got headphones on, but yeah. So the best export you can get from China. I brought her to Kentucky with me.
I'm happy for your family there. That's great. So
yeah, that was kind of the origin story. The real idea behind hempwood is not the cannabis plant. The real idea behind hempwood is doing what's right and the environment. And so if there's one thing in this world, no matter what color or gender or where you live, that affects you, it is the environment.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, doing right by the environment or trying to kind of move the needle a little bit in the correct direction is what is behind all of this. So regenerative farming is more important than hemp farming, because regenerative farming means you're adding to the soil, to Mother Nature, where hemp is part of that, and it's a tool in the toolbox. Just like don't cut down a tree, just use some hemp makes perfect sense. Well, there's other crops that work there as well. They just don't have that much of the excitement behind it. Like, people wouldn't want to make a floor out of river reeds, for example. You wouldn't have that marketing appeal. Whereas, and it probably wouldn't quite have the strength either.
Yeah, it wouldn't be as long and strong a fiber. Have you ever heard of Dave Sieber and his Hemp Shield stain product?
Yes, I have met him. I believe he just passed away this past year, right?
Passed away. He worked with a fellow named Bill Conde back in the early 1990s, a full 30 years ago, working at the Washington State University's Wood Science Lab. And they produced some test hemp fiber board, which is different from your product, but it's similar in a way as well. But I remember back then, the Washington State University's Wood Lab said that the samples they had were stronger than steel, stronger than any other fiber they had tested. I guess a hemp stain would work real well on your product.
It does. I actually, if you hold on 1 second, I'll show you a little bit of it.
So is that the Hemp Shield from Sieber's company, or is that a different one?
That's actually from our seeds. And it makes it look like this. So you can see here has no coating on it.
Uh-huh.
And this here has the hemp seed oil on it.
Right. It looks nice.
And so it works kind of like linseed oil.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you use on the butcher block and stuff.
When it comes to fiber, I'm kind of an expert on non-wood paper and fiber. When it comes to fiber, even experts have difference telling flax from hemp. They're very, very similar in the fiber and very, very similar in the seed and the seed oil and protein. So the flax doesn't grow as big and doesn't produce as much per acre as hemp does, though.
Is that right? So I know jute and flax do work in a similar manner in the process of making wood. I know those were two things that we looked at with like 200 different types of plant fiber in the nanotech labs. And they both worked as well. And we figured out a way to make all different types of stuff. River reeds. We figured out a way to make corn stalks work. We figured out a lot of that stuff. It's just which one is a viable market as well as a viable product. Because people are using the spent rice hulls or the spent rice plants for making OSB now, but I think they're struggling because it's not a mature product, so it costs a little bit more, and people aren't asking for it specifically. They're only trying to use it as a loss leader or trying to get it cheaper than what they would pay for the other. Whereas right now, with the excitement around hemp and people wanting to go green, not only is the story of what we're doing about the hemp, it's about the glue, because our glue does not have formaldehyde. And 85% of wood building materials or engineered wood products use formaldehyde-based glue, which is known to give people asthma, which is known to give people emphysema, which is known to cause respiratory issues. And right now, with COVID on the prowl, and I was actually, I had pneumonia a week ago. I was in the hospital. Yeah, last Friday, I was in the hospital in Colorado with pneumonia.
Was it by the flu or COVID?
Well, I went on an elk hunt, and I spent a couple too many days at the top of the mountains.
Okay.
And so I ended up getting sick from elevation and how cold it was. And I got fluid down in my lungs, which ended up getting bacteria in it, and was having respiratory issues. And so my, I want to say it was 58% was my oxygen level. And so I recently learned what it's like to not be able to breathe properly. And imagine doing that, maybe unknowingly, or maybe because you're making a choice to choose a cheaper imported product, but imagine that being the effect that is on your kids because you put a formaldehyde-based material in your house. Now, I'm not saying that it happens to everybody. A big part of it is ventilation as well. So if you have a house that you keep all your windows open and things like that, then you don't have those VOC emissions that build up as much in your house. But if you're in an apartment in the city and you don't like to keep your AC or your heat cranking all the time, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to have some built up emissions in your house.
Yeah.
And what people think is like new car smell, really? That's plastic for you. Exactly. So there's a lot of different things that people need to take into consideration. And what we find is the best approach to take to it is give people the information and say, hey, look, we've got a product that is 100% made in America. We've got a product that outperforms its traditional peers, which would be white oak or hickory in the form of flooring. We have a product that has no added formaldehyde, so you're not going to have your VOC emissions. You're not going to have your different carcinogens that are inside of there. And this product is the most sustainable building material that it is, like that's out there. because it grows in 4 months instead of 80 years. And so when you put this whole thing together and people understand the story, there's little to no reason to not go with a more sustainable building material, and approaching people that already shop at Whole Foods, or approaching people that are already conscious about what they're putting in their body, because everybody knows soda's not good for you, but I would imagine more people are drinking Coca-Cola than apple juice. So there's definitely a conscious decision you have to make. And putting something into your body not only means the food and drink, but it's also the air you breathe. And making that decision for everyone around you rather than just yourself. Because you can put vinyl flooring in your house, and that's known to have carcinogens. You could put a formaldehyde-based wood floor in your house, and that's known to have carcinogens. But they've already started to pull back and ban these different things that are out there, just like they did with asbestos in the 80s, lead paint in the 70s, and that dirty drywall in the 2000s. I mean, every decade there seems to be more understanding of what dirty building materials are out there and what they do.
I've got to say that I think you're being very conservative in terms of 1 to 3%. And obviously, if you had any percentage of that huge market, that would be great for your company and your growth and your bottom line. But I think it will be a larger number. And so there's a book out there by a friend of mine, Chris Conrad, called Hemp Lifeline to the Future. Starts off with a kind of science fiction chapter where he talks about waking up in your hemp sheets and taking a bath with your hemp towels and using your hemp body products and your hemp wood and all of these kind of things. And so I think it's possible to go beyond that. But I understand you want to be realistic in your estimations. You don't want to seem crazy by saying it's going to be 50% or something. You know, most people don't realize this, but being in the hemp paper industry, I know that by law here in the United States, tobacco has to be wrapped in either hemp or flax paper. So anytime somebody smokes a tobacco cigarette, little do they know, the odds are 50-50 that they are inhaling the stems of the marijuana plant. The other 50% is flax fiber, which again is very, very similar.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. By law, because other wood-based fiber for cigarettes is toxic. So by law here in the United States, all tobacco is wrapped in either hemp or flax paper. And so we're going to come back to it. But if somebody's interested in your products, where can they go? How can they contact you? What's the best way to reach you?
Easy. So we have the domain name hempwood.com. So if you go to hempwood.com, you can find our email address, which would be sales@hempwood.com. Or you can find our phone number on there, which is 888-338-1235. And you can find us on all the social media platforms. Our Instagram gets lots of love out there. We've got a LinkedIn, we've got a YouTube, we've got a Facebook, we've got a Pinterest, you name it. And most of these platforms that we try to set up is to exhibit what the artists and what the craftsmen are making out of hemp wood. Because if someone buys wood from us, we want to promote what they can make out of it.
So
Well,
I know that the fellow who puts on the NOCO Hemp Conference and the Southern Hemp Expo, we are for better alternatives, I think is the name of their pack. But he's making guitars out of your hemp wood. Is that right?
Heck yeah. So Morris Beagle is a strong supporter of what we do. And he's been making guitars out of it for more than a year.
Yeah.
I've held several of them.
Guitars, right? Silver Mountain
Yes,
guitar. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So they have that stuff going on in Colorado. I can say that there's some beautiful cabinetry that's getting made here in Kentucky. as well as we have a company in Arizona. Her name is Tammy. She's doing a cabinetry line. There's someone up in Wisconsin that's doing a cabinetry line. There's a lot of bar tops that are getting made out of it now for music studios and bars and restaurants and things. There's quite a bit of furniture, whether it's the Amish guys making it or our friends up at Mamco up in New York, that they do the hemp plastics. But they're also doing a lot of furniture lines, like signature furniture lines for hotels and the hospitality industry. They're doing baseball bats out of it. There's people that are making golf putters. iHemp Michigan, they're making golf putters out of it, and those things are flying off the shelf. There's our friend Kate down in California, and she turns pens for like the Hollywood stars out of it. So she's making all these different neat items. So really, if you could use oak as the base material for what you're trying to make, you could use hemp wood. Now, we don't do like a softwood, like a stud, like a 2x4 for framing. And we don't do OSB, not because we can't, but because financially it's not there. And so you have to set something up to perform or to mimic what is a face grade. When people look at wood, it's a face grade hardwood that has a higher value. And then that's what actually makes sense to have a manufactured product. Whereas if you're going for a softwood that's structural, when you frame a house and it goes behind the wall, then even with 2x4s going up to $8 or $9 this past year, it cost us $10 to make a hempwood 2x4. And the normal price of a 2x4 is $3 after Lowe's gets their 40% cut. And so it really means that
where I live here in the Northwest, clear cuts are very common. And some of my first hemp paper products went to environmental groups like Greenpeace and people working against clear cutting forests. But your product obviously could save a lot of trees. When they quit clear cutting the world's forests, I think your hemp products might be more affordable. I don't think that your prices with volume might go down, and wood prices with scarcity are likely to go up. And
that's absolutely true.
In the long term, I think you're on the cutting edge of a huge business here. And I really am happy to start showing this around. I think I told you I have a friend who has a flooring business. He's been selling a lot of bamboo flooring in Atlanta. As soon as I sent him a picture of that, he ordered some of your samples to show to his products. And I think I also told you that I work with doctors who help medical marijuana patients. We saw 20 patients just this morning. And I have this little piece of hemp wood out there on the table for everybody. And I actually still have several tons of hemp paper. So I give away to every one of my patients a couple of hemp paper notepads. But now I'm showing off your hemp as well. And a couple of people were very interested in it that are in construction. And I showed them your catalog. And one of the questions they said is, and they took pictures and your number and stuff. One of the questions they had is, how does it compare in terms of price today compared to bamboo, oak, hickory, and hemp wood?
Well, that is easy. So we are directly competitive with American white oak. So if you're making it in America, and white oak is 50 to 55% of what we call the better and best hardwood flooring industry. So the wide plank, the stuff you want to put in your home, we are dollar for dollar comparable.
Well, that's great. So you're already competitive. You just have to get this out in front of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on the road every other week since March, going to trade shows and going to conferences and visiting dealers. And We now have 29 flooring dealers across the United States that we've set up since the beginning of July. We now have a factory rep network of over 30 people who are out preaching the good word and trying to get it into projects. But it's still just scratching the surface. What we need is people like yourself to go evangelize it and let everybody know the Northwest is as far away from us as you can get in the United States.
Yeah.
And there's not enough, Greg, to get up there enough of the time to get it out.
Well, our income is just a little bit higher than the rest of the country too. And the environmental consciousness, I might say, comparatively as a population as a whole, is a little bit more sensitive here in the Northwest as well. So I know that there's a huge market for this here, that you just have to get it into the hands of those stores that are selling this stuff to the people around the world, and you're going to boom, So how is it right now in terms of meeting demand? Are you able to meet your demand? Are you expanding production? What is your plan in terms of that? Is there a back order time, or if I ordered, like I am going to order one of your tables. I told you that a couple days ago. I'm going to get one of your tables for my office here right away. If I order it today, how long will it take to ship?
2 weeks. So we have a 15-day lead time. That is our standard. We were falling behind on being able to meet our demand. And so we did build a second factory. And that second factory just opened up July 23rd.
Congrats.
And I wouldn't say congratulations. It's just double the work.
Yeah. But, no, it's great. You're growing and you're saving trees and the environment. Congratulations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole reason we do it. It's the right thing to do. And so our flooring, we were backlogged for 60 or 90 days. Now with the new flooring mill up and at 'em, the new factory has got us so we don't have anything that's more than 30 days old. And we're trying to actually start building an inventory so we can ship our flooring same week. We've gotten it so our sample orders ship out same week now. We've hired additional people that is only their job, is to take the sample orders and get them out within a week. We have all of our lumber orders and our standard smaller flooring orders that go out in 15 days. And then we're still catching up on some of the bigger orders when people place a couple thousand square feet. Those ones are still in that 4-week range.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's not bad though.
Oh, it's better than the industry standard. For the wood industry right now, it's all over the place.
I see you have sample packs that are available. Lumber packs and flooring packs are just $10, and that includes shipping. We'll have to pop up some pictures of those here. But,
absolutely. I highly recommend the Architect and Design Pack. The Architect and Design Pack is $20.
Yeah.
And that includes shipping, and usually about $12 of the cost there goes towards our shipping. So we lose money on it, but it gets the idea out there in people's hands. And we have a 20% success rate or conversion. When somebody touches hempwood, all of a sudden they start thinking. And then that thought turns into action typically within 2 to 6 months of someone saying, honey, we got to replace the flooring in our dining room and our great room over here. It's 30 years old. The dogs have scratched it up. And look at this hempwood that's been sitting on my desk for a couple of months. People look at it and then they smell it.
I replaced the flooring in my office about 5 years ago with ceramic tiles. Boy, I wish I'd known about your hempwood. I wish it had been out there then. That'd be so nice to have hemp flooring in here. But maybe I can't afford it today, but maybe sometime in the near future we'll replace these ceramic tiles. But I'm definitely going to get your table. That I'm looking forward to.
Heck yeah. Well, James Brown, and that is his real name. That's our sales guy here. You can see him sitting back here. Say hi, James. He takes care of everybody. So I will provide him your information. He will put your flooring order in, or your table order in.
Table right now. I can't
Oh
afford
yeah.
it today, but I can afford a table. They're
All
only
right.
$100 for some of your kits here for a table. What does it say in terms of the dimensions of it? It's 72 by 42. That's a pretty big table.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can see actually. Here's examples of some of the tables right here in our office. These are
Yeah.
the 42 inch by 42 inch. This is
I
the
see.
face sawn. This is the rip sawn. There is assembly required for the kits. And so you're going to have to do some work yourself. It's not as easy as just an IKEA where you just stick the legs on it. You're going to be assembling it. You're going to be staining it and coating it. We do offer the option of us assembling it for you, and then you just put the legs on site. So there's different options. We have cabinetry in the same fashion. There's a lot of wood turning blanks where people are making pens and people are making duck calls, and I'll show you some of this stuff here.
Please.
So here is a hemp
A
wood.
hemp pin. That is
You
pretty.
probably saw some of those at the show, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you have
yeah.
other things.
Here's hempwood duck call.
So blow it. Go ahead. Wow.
Okay, duck hunter. We got actually people that are making turkey calls out of them.
Wow.
So you can see. And
Wow.
that beautiful hempwood back on it right there.
Wow.
You can see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's actually got the word hempwood engraved in there.
That's pretty neat.
There's coasters that people are using.
Yeah.
Like a drink coaster. There's bottle openers. There's knives.
Uh-huh. Greg, I'm getting more excited every time you pop up another product. I want that. No, I want that.
Yep. So there's all these different things that you can make out of it. We stay in our lane by making the lumber. We make panels. We make flooring. And then the rest of our items are kits or craftsman items. So like wood turning blanks and things like that. So people can make their own. Because we're trying to encourage that whole makers community to make stuff where we don't step on their toes and people can generate their own lifestyle income from buying hempwood and making things that their local markets want.
So I know I mentioned, but I'll mention it again, the guitars. I know Silver Mountain Guitars not only has the body of the guitar, but they also have the amp boxes and stuff that are made from your hemp wood. Outside of Silver Mountain Guitars, what other companies would you recommend people go to find more of your nifty products?
Oh, absolutely. So we're starting to sign on some mainstream companies here. And this is really, really big news and really, really good news for the hemp industry. So we are supplying BMW with hempwood for components in their vehicles, as well as for flooring for their showrooms.
Wow.
We are supplying Target. Actually, their one store, a concept store in San Francisco, is doing a eco-friendly display area out of hempwood. And so people can support these big corporations that are actually starting to grasp the movement and actually starting to care about what the world is about, then it'll encourage them to do it more. And that's the only way it actually becomes mainstream. If you could get in your area, if somebody could put some pressure on, say, Microsoft to switch all of their desks in their offices to hempwood desks, you'd be saving a tree for every 4 desks that are out there. Or if you could talk to maybe Amazon right in your backyard out there and tell them to get with it and start actually using some of these hemp-based products that are good for the environment rather than what's the least expensive thing you can put into an office, then it actually improves your employee morale and productivity. It's been
And the air quality with the volatile gases that formaldehyde and other binders give off. You're using soy. I bet someday you'll be using some hemp seed oil in some of that too. But I'm definitely going to get one of your tables right away. If somebody is interested in ordering your products and contacting you, and I know it's hempwood.com, you want to put out your email and your phone number one more time here?
Heck yeah. So hempwood.com. You can get a hold of us at sales@hempwood.com. And our phone number is 888-338-1235. And those are all Fibonacci numbers for you math dorks out there like me.
All right. So is there anything else you'd like to say in closing, Greg?
Hey, well, basically, the Northwest is one of the last places we really need to touch, and it's one of our largest potential markets. So the grassroots movement that is causing all of these different hemp and cannabis things to happen, we need that movement to get behind what we're doing. Go to your local flooring store and say, hey, do you got hempwood flooring? Even if you have no intention of buying it, just go in and ask them about it. Because when someone asks a shop owner 2, 3, 4 times for something they don't have, then they start looking. The same way with letting people know that hempwood is a thing. Bring it up to your school teacher because they're going to teach it to the next generation. Or bring it up to your local business owner. Whether it's somebody who's got say the Apple stores that use white oak tables in every store across the United States. It's real clean. It looks a little chic, but they're also chopping down an 80-year-old beauty.
Yeah, and hemp making that white fiber perfectly.
Absolutely. There's a time and a place, and we're in it right now. We just need the market to come along with us.
Well, I am going to do my part to get it out there, Greg. If you're ever up here in the Northwest, stop on in sometime. I'm going to order that hemp table right away, and I will be showing this around. This program, though we're on cable TV here in the Northwest, hempsters all over the world watch this. So this will get out into other people who are just as crazy about hemp as I am. So I want to thank you for coming on. So it's hempwood.com. And the phone number one more time?
888-338-1235.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Thanks for coming on. It was a pleasure meeting you a couple of weeks ago at the Southern Hemp Expo. I'm just amazed at the information about BMW and Target. That is great. I know BMW's been using European hemp for some of their molding in their body interiors, but I think making a hemp wood steering wheel and some of the other things in there, they could easily use some of your high quality products. I look forward to seeing you again somewhere down the Hempen Road. Keep up your good work and keep working to restore hemp.
Thanks, bud. Have a good one.
Thank you, Greg. My pleasure.